William Bradford of Plymouth Plantation, Book 2, 1620 to 1646, History of the New Settlement at Plymouth. Number 1. Deed of government drawn up. Death of half their number, Squanto. Compact with the Indians. Captain Dremer's description of New Plymouth in 1620. The rest of this work, if God give me life and opportunity, I shall for brevity's sake handle in the form of annals, noting only the principal doings chronologically. First I will turn back a little, and begin with a compact or deed drawn up by them before they went ashore to settle, constituting the first foundation of their government. This was occasioned partly by the discontented and mutinous speeches that some of the strangers amongst them had let fall, that when they got ashore they would use their liberty that none had power to command them. The patent procured being for Virginia and not for New England, which belonged to another company, with which the Virginia Company had nothing to do. And further, it was believed by the leading men among the settlers that such a deed drawn up by themselves, considering the present condition, would be as effective as any patent, and in some respects more so. The form of the deed was as follows: In the name of God, Amen. We whose names are underwritten, the loyal subjects of our dread sovereign lord, King James, by the grace of God, the Great Britain, France, and Ireland, King, Defender of the Faith, etc., having undertaken for the glory of God, the advancement of the Christian faith, and honor of our king and country, a voyage to plant the first colony in the northern parts of Virginia, do by these present solemnly and mutually in the presence of God and one another, covenant and combine ourselves into a civil body politic, for our better ordering and preservation, and for the furtherance of the ends aforesaid, and by virtue hereof to enact, constitute, and frame such just and equal laws, ordinances, acts, constitutions, and offices, from time to time, as shall be thought most meet and convenient for the general use of the colony, unto which we promise all due submission and obedience. In witness whereof, we have here underscribed our names at Cape Cod, the 11th of November, in the year of the reign of our sovereign Lord King James of England, France, and Ireland, the 18th, and of Scotland on the 54th, A.D. 1620. They then chose, or rather confirmed, Mr. John Carver, a godly man and highly approved among them, as their governor for that year, after They then chose a rather confirmed Mr. John Carver, a godly man and highly approved among them, as their governor for that year, after they had provided a place for their goods and common stores, which they were long in unloading, owing to want of boats, the severity of the winter weather, the sickness, had begun some small cottages for dwellings. As time would admit, they met and consulted of law and order, both of civil and military government, as seemed suited to their conditions, adding to them from time to time as urgent need demanded. In these arduous and difficult beginnings, discontent and murmurings rose among some, and mutinous speeches and bearing in others, but they were soon quelled and overcome by the wisdom, patience, and just and equal administration of things by the governor and the better part, who held faithfully together in the main. But soon a most lamentable blow fell upon them. In 2 or 3 months' time half of their company died, partly owing to the severity of the winter, especially during January and February, and the want of houses and other comforts, partly to scurvy and other diseases, which their long voyage and their incommodious quarters had brought upon them. Of all the 100 odd persons, scarcely 50 remained, and sometimes 2 or 3 persons died in a day. In the time of worst distress, there were but 6 or 7 sound persons who, to their great commendations be it spoken, spared no pains night or day, but with great toil and at the risk of their own health fetched wood, made fires, prepared food for the sick, made their beds, washed the infected clothes, dressed and undressed them, in a word, did all the homely necessary services for them, which dainty and queasy stomachs cannot endure to hear mentioned. And all this they did willingly and cheerfully, without the least grudging, showing their love to their friends and brothers, a rare example and worthy to be remembered. Two of these seven were Mr. William Brewster, their reverend elder, and Miles Standish, their captain and military commander, to whom myself and many others were much beholden in our low, sick condition. And yet the Lord so upheld these men, that in this general calamity they were not at all infected with sickness. And what I have said of these few, I should say of many others who died in this general visitation, and others yet living, that while they had health or strength, they forsook none that had need of them. I doubt not that their recompense is with the Lord. But I must not pass by another remarkable and unforgettable occurrence. When this calamity fell among the passengers who were to be left here to settle, they were hurried ashore and made to drink water, so that the sailors might have the more beer. And when one suffering in the sickness desired but a small can of beer, it was answered that if he were their own father he should have none. Then the disease began to seize the sailors also, so that almost half of the crew died before they went away, and many of their officers and strongest men amongst them, the boatswain, gunner, three-quarter-master, the cook, and others. At this the captain was somewhat struck, and sent to the sick shore, and told the governor that he should send for beer for those that had need of it, even should he have to drink water on the homeward voyage. But amongst the sailors there was a quite different bearing in their misery. Those who before, in the time of their health and welfare, had been boon champions in drinking and jollity, began now to desert one another, saying that they would not risk their lives for the sick among them, lest they should be infected by coming to help them in their cabins. If they died, let them die. But the passengers who were still aboard showed them what pity they could, which made some of their hearts relent, such as the boatswain, who had an overbearing young man, and before would often curse and scoff at the passengers. But when he grew weak, they had compassion on him and helped him. Then he confessed he did not deserve it at their hands, for he had abused them in word and deed. "Oh," he said, "you, I see now, show your love like Christians indeed to one another, but we let one another lie and die like dogs." Another lay cursing his wife, saying if it had not been for her he had never come on this unlucky voyage, and anon cursed his fellows, saying he had done this or that for some of them. He had spent so much and so much amongst them, that they were now weary of him, and he did not help him in his need. Another made over to one of his mates all he had, when he should die, if he would but help him in his weakness. So his companion went and got a little spice and prepared some food once or twice, and when he did not die as soon as he expected, he went among his comrades and swore the rogue would cheat him of his inheritance. He would see him choke before he prepared him another more food, and so the poor fellow died before morning. All this while the Indians came skulking about those who were ashore, and would sometimes show themselves aloof, at a distance, but when any approached them they would run away. Once they stole away the men's tools where they had been at work, and were gone to dinner. About the 16th of March a certain Indian came boldly among them and spoke to them in broken English, which they could well understand, but were astonished at it. At length they understood by speaking with him that he was not of these parts, but belonged to the eastern country, where some English ships came to fish, and with some of these English he was acquainted, and could name several of them. From them he had got his knowledge of the language. He became useful to them in acquainting them with many things concerning the state and the country in the east parts where he lived, as also of the people there, their names and number, their situation and distance from this place, and who was chief among them. His name was Samoset. He told them also of another Indian whose name was Squanto, a native of this part, who had been in England and could speak English better than himself. After some time of entertainment, being dismissed with gifts, in a little while he returned with 5 more. They brought back all the tools they had stolen, and made way for the coming of their great Sakam, called Massasoit, who about 4 or 5 days after came with the chief of his friends and other attendants, and with Squanto. With him, after friendly entertainment and some gifts, they made a peace, which has now continued for 24 years. These were the terms: 1. That neither he nor any of his should injure or harm any of their people. 2. That if any of his did any harm or any of theirs, he should send the offender, that they might punish him. 3. That if anything were taken away from any of theirs, he should cause it to be restored, and they should do the like to his. Number 4. If any made unjust war against him, they would aid him. If any made war against them, he should aid them. Number 5. He should send to his neighboring confederates to certify them of this, that they might not wrong them, but might be likewise comprised in the conditions of peace. Number 6. That when their men came to them, they should leave their bows and arrows behind them. After this he returned to his place, called Sowams, some 40 miles off, but Squanto stayed with them, and was their interpreter, and became a special instrument sent of God for their good, beyond their expectation. He showed them how to plant their corn, where to take fish and other commodities, and guided them to unknown places, and never left them till he died. He was a native of these parts, and had been one of the few survivors of the plague hereabouts. He was carried away with others by one Hunt, a captain of a ship, who intended to sell them for slaves in Spain, but he got away from England for England, and was received by a merchant in London, employed in Newfoundland and other parts, and lastly brought into these parts by a Captain Dermer, a gentleman employed by Sir Ferdinand Jorge and others for discovery and other projects in these parts. Of Captain Dermer I will say something, because it is mentioned in a book published A.D. 1622 by the President and Council of New England, that he made peace between the savages of these parts and the English, of which this plantation, as it is there imitated, had the benefit. But what kind of peace it was appears by what befell him and his men. Captain Dermer had been here the same year that the people of the Mayflower arrived, as appeared in the account written by him and given to me by a friend, bearing date June 30th of 1620. As they came in the November following, there was but 4 months' difference. In this account to his honored friend he makes the following references to this very place. I will first begin, say he, with the place with which Squanto, or Tisquantum, was taken away, which in Captain Smith's map is called Plymouth. And I would that Plymouth had the same commodities. I could wish that the first plantation might be situated here, if there came to the number of 50 persons or upward. Otherwise at Charleston, because there the savages are less to be feared. The Pokanoks, who live in the west of Plymouth, bear an inveterate hatred to the English, and are the greater strength than all the savages from there to Penobscot. Their desire of revenge was occasioned by the Englishmen, who, having invited many of them on board, slaughtered them with small shot, when the Indians say they offered no injury on their part. Whether they were English or no, it may be doubted, but they believe that they were, and the French have so assured them. For this reason Squanto cannot deny but they would have killed me when I was at Namesket, had he not interceded hard for me. The soil of the border of this great bay may be compared to most of the plantations which I have seen in Virginia. The land of this various sorts. Petau is a stubborn but strong soil. Nauset and Satakut are the most part a blackish, deep mold, much like that where the best tobacco in Virginia grows. In the great bay itself is a quantity of cod and bass or mullet. But above all he commends the Pokanakets country for the richest soil and much open ground, fit for English grain, etc. Massachusetts, about 9 leagues from Plymouth, and situated between both, is full of islands and peninsulas, and for the most part very fertile. He was taken prisoner by the Indians at Manamoek, a place not far off, not now well known, and he gave them what they demanded for his liberty. But when they got what they desired, they still kept him, and endeavored to kill his men. But he freed himself by seizing some of them, whom he kept bound till they gave him a canoe loaded of corn, of which see Purchase Lib following 1778, but this was AD 1619. After the writing of the foregoing narrative, Dermer went with Squanto to the island of Capawack, which lies south of this place on the way to Virginia. Here he went ashore among the Indians to trade as he used to do, but was betrayed and assaulted by them, and all his men were killed except one who kept the boat. He himself got aboard very sorely wounded, and they would have cut off his head as he climbed into his boat, had not the man rescued him. They got away and made shift to reach Virginia, where he died. This shows how far the natives were from peace, and under what dangerous conditions this plantation was begun. But for the powerful hand of the Lord which protected them, this was partly the reason why they kept aloof and were so long before they came to the English. Another reason, as afterwards they say themselves stated, was that about 3 years before a French ship was wrecked at Cape Cod, but the men got ashore, saved their lives and large part of their provision. When the Indians heard of it, they surrounded them, and never left watching and dogging them till they got the advantage and killed them, all but 3 or 4, whom they kept and sent from one sachem to another, making sport of them and using them worse than slaves. Of these, Captain Dermer released 2. So the Indians thought that this ship had now come to revenge these outrages. It was also later disclosed that before they came to the English to make friends, they got all the powwows of the country together for 3 days to curse and extricate them in a horrible, devilish manner, with conjurations holding their assembly in a dark, dismal swamp. But to return, the spring now approaching, it pleased God, the morality began to cease among them, and the sick recovered apace, which put new life into them all. Though they had bore their sad afflictions, put with as much patience and contentedness as I think any people could do, but it was the Lord who upheld them, and had beforehand prepared them, many having long borne the yoke, yea, even from their youth. Many other minor matters I will omit, several of them having been published already in a journal written by one of the company, and some other narratives and descriptions of journeys already published, to which I refer those who wish to acquaint themselves more closely. Having now come to March 25th, I will begin the year of 1621. Number 2. The Mayflower returns. Death of John Carver. William Bradford. Governor. Trade with the Massachusetts. The first marriage. Friendship with Massasoit. Confirmed Hobomoke. Expedition against the Corbitant, and the first harvest. Arrival of Robert Cushman with 35 settlers. Fortune returns. Leyden. The Narragansetts challenge, and Christmas Day, 1621. They now decided to send back the ship which had brought them over, and which had remained till about this time or the beginning of April. The reason on their part why she had stayed so long was the necessity and danger that they were under. It was well toward the end of December before they could land anything, or they were in condition to receive anything ashore, and after that, on the 14th of January, the house they had built for a general rendezvous accidentally caught fire, and some of them had to go aboard the ship for shelter. Then the sickness began to fall among them sorely, and the weather was so bad that they could not hasten their preparations. Again, the governor and the chief members, seeing so many fall sick and die daily, thought it unwise to send the ship away, considering their condition and the danger they were in from the Indians, till they could procure some shelter, and therefore thought it better to incur further expense for themselves and their friends than to risk everything. And though before the captain and the sailors had hurried the passengers ashore, so that they could be gone, now many of the crew being dead, and some of the ablest of them, and many of the rest lay sick and weak, the captain did not dare put to sea till he saw them begin to recover and the heart of winter over. The settlers, as many as were able, then began to plant their corn, in which service Squanto stood them in good stead, showing them how to plant it and cultivate it. He also told them that unless they got fish as to manure this exhausted old soil, it would come to nothing, and he showed them that in the middle of April plenty of fish would come to the brook by which they had begun to build. He taught them how to catch it, and where to get other necessary provisions, all of which they found true by experience. They sowed some English seed, such as wheat and peas, but it came to no good, either because of the badness of the seed, or the lateness of the season, or some other defect. This April, while they were busy sowing their seed, their governor, Mr. John Carver, one hot day came out of the field very sick. He complained greatly that his head, and he lay down, and within a few hours his senses failed. He never spoke again, and died a few days after. His death was much lamented, and depressed them deeply, with good cause. He was buried in the best manner possible, with some volleys of shot by all the bore arms, and his wife, a weak woman, died 5 or 6 weeks after him. Shortly after, William Bradford was chosen governor in his stead, and having not yet recovered from his illness, in which he had been near the point of death, Isaac Allerton was appointed assistant to him. These two, by renewed election each year, continued several years together. This I here note once for all. On May 12th the first marriage took place, which, according to the laudable custom of the Low Countries, in which they lived, it was thought proper for the magistrate to perform as a civil institution, upon which many questions about inheritance depend, and other things requiring their cognizance, as well as being consonant with the Scriptures, and nowhere mentioned as the gospel as a part of the minister's duty. Having now made some progress with the affairs at home, it was thought advisable to send a deputation to their new friend Massasoit, and to bestow upon him some gratitude to bind him faster to them, also at the same time to view the country and see in what manner he lived, what strength he had about him, and what was the way to his place, if at any time they should need him. So on July 2nd they sent Mr. Edward Winslow and Mr. Hopkin, with aforesaid Squanto, for their guide. They gave Massasoit a suit of clothing and a horseman's coat, with some other small things, which were kindly accepted, though they found but short commons, and came home both weary and hungry. The Indians in those times did not have nearly so much corn as they had had since the English supplied them with hoes, and set them as example by their industry in preparing new ground therewithin. Massasoit's place was found to be 40 miles off, and the soil good, but his people had died in great numbers during the recent plague throughout these parts. But 3 years before the coming of the English, thousands of them died, until the living were not able to bury the dead. Their skulls and bones were found in many places lying still above ground, where their houses and dwelling places had been. A very sad spectacle. But they brought word that the Narragansetts lived just on the other side of the great bay, and were a strong populous tribe living close together, and had not been attacked by the wasting plague. About the later end of this month, one John Billington lost himself in the woods, and wandered up and down for about 5 days, living on berries and what he could find. At length he came across an Indian plantation 20 miles to the south, called Manamet. They conveyed him further off to Nauset, among the Indians who had set upon the landing party, when they were coasting, and while their ship lay at the Cape, as before noted. But the governor caused him to be inquiried for among the Indians, and at length Massasoit sent word where he was, and the governor sent a shallop for him, and he had him delivered. The Indians there also came and made their peace, and full satisfaction was given by the settlers to those whose corn they had found and taken when they were at Cape Cod. Thus their peace and acquaintance was pretty well established with the natives about them. Another Indian, called Hobamok, came to live with them, a fine strong man, and some account amongst the Indians for his valor and qualities. He remained very faithful to the English till he died. He and Squanto having gone upon business among the Indians, a Sachem called Corbitant, allied to Massasoit, but never a good friend to the English to this day, met with them at an Indian town called Namasaket, 14 miles west of this, and whether out of envy of them or malice to the English, began to quarrel with them, threatened to stab Hobomok, but he, being a strong man, cleared himself of him and came running away, all sweating, and told the governor what had befallen him, and that he feared that they had killed Squanto, for they threatened them both, for no other reason than that they were friends to the English and serviceable to them. The governor taking counsel, it was decided not to pass it over, for if they allowed their friends and messengers to be harmed, none would associate with them, or give them intelligence, or do them service afterwards. The next thing the Indians would fall upon them too. So it was resolved to send the captain and 14 men well armed, and to go and fall upon them in the night, and if they found that Squanto was killed, to cut off Corbetant's head, but not to hurt any but those who had a hand in it. Hobomok was asked if he would go and be their guide and bring them there before day. He said he would, and he could show them the house where Corbetant lived, and which he was. They set forth on the 14th of August and surrounded the house, and the captain, giving orders to let none escape, entered in search of him. But he had gone away that day, so they missed him, but learned that Squanto was alive, and that Corbetant had only threatened to kill him, and made as if to stab him, but did not. So they withheld their punishment, and did no one harm, and the people came trembling and brought them the best provisions they had. When they had been acquainted by Hobomok with the purpose, 3 Indians, badly wounded, broke out of the house and tried to pass through the guard. These they brought back with them, and had their wounds dressed and cured, and then sent them home. After this they had many greetings from various Sakams, and much firmer peace. Even the Indians of the island of Kapawak sent to declare friendship, and Corbetant himself used the meditation of Messoet to make his peace, but was shy to come near them for a long time after. After this, on the 18th of September, they set out of their shallop with 10 men and Squanto as guide and interpreter to the Massachusetts, to explore the bay and trade with the natives, which they accomplished and were kindly received. The Indians were much afraid of the Tarantines, a tribe to the eastward, who used to come at harvest time and take away their corn, and often kill some of them. They returned in safety and brought home a good quantity of beaver, and reported on the place, wishing they could have settled there. But it seemed that the Lord, who assigns to all men the bounds of their habitations, had appointed it for other use. And thus they found the Lord to be with them in all their way, and to bless their outgoings and incomings, for which let his holy name have the praise forever to all posterity. They began now to gather in the small harvest they had, and to prepare their homes for the winter, being well recovered in health and strength, and plentiful provision, for while some had been thus employed in affairs away from home, others were occupied in fishing for cod, bass, and other fish, of which they caught a good quantity, every family having their portion. All the summer there was no want, and now, as winter approached, wild fowl began to arrive, of which there were plenty. When they came here first, though afterwards they became more scarce, as well as wild fowl, they got abundance of wild turkeys, venison, etc. Each person was about to peck a meal a week, or now, since harvest, Indian corn in the proportion, and afterwards many wrote at length about their plenty in the Friends in England, nor feigned but true reports. In November, about 12 months after their arrival, there came a small ship unexpectedly, bringing Mr. Cushman, so much spoken of before, and with him 35 persons, to remain and live at the plantation, at which they rejoiced not a little. And the new arrivals, when they came ashore and found all well, and saw plenty of victuals in every house, they were no less glad. Most of them were healthy young men, many of them wild enough, who had little considered what they were undertaking, till they reached the harbor of Cape Cod, and there saw nothing but a naked and barren place. They then began to wonder what would become of them, should the people be dead or cut off by the Indians. So hearing that some of the sailors were saying, they began to plot to seize the sails, lest the ship should go and leave them there. But the captain, hearing of it, gave them good words, and told them that if any misfortune should have befallen the people here, He thought he had food enough to take them to Virginia, and whilst he had a bit, they should have their share, which satisfied them. So they were all landed, but they brought not so much a biscuit cake or any other victuals with them, nor bedding, except some poor things they had in their cabins, nor pot nor pan to cook any food in, nor any clothes, for many of them had sold their coats and cloaks at Plymouth on their way out. But some Birching Lane suits were sent over in the ship, out of which they were supplied. The plantation was glad of this addition of strength, but could have wished that many of them had been a better class, and all of them better furnished with provision, but could not now be helped. In this ship Mr. Weston sent a long letter to Mr. Carver, the late governor, now deceased, full of complaints and expostulations about the former troubles of Southampton in keeping the ship so long in the country and returning her without lading, etc., most of which, for brevity, I omit. The rest is as follows. Mr. Weston in England to Mr. John Carver at New Plymouth. I never dared acquaint the adventurers with the alterations in the conditions first agreed on between us, which I have since been very glad of, for I am well assured that they had known as much as I do. They would not have ventured a halfpenny of what was necessary for this ship. That you sent no lading back with the ship is strange, and very properly resented. I know your weaknesses was the cause of it, and I believe more weakness of judgment than weakness of hands. A quarter of the time you spent in discoursing, arguing, and consulting would have do much more, but that is past. If you mean bona fide to perform the conditions agreed upon, do us the favor to copy them out fair, and subscribe them with the names of your principal members, and likewise give us account, as particularly as you can, how our money was laid out. Then I shall be able to give some satisfaction, while I am now forced to put them off with good words. And consider that the life of this business depends on the lading of this ship. If you do satisfactorily, so that I may recoup the great sums I disbursed for the former voyage, and must do for this one, I promise you I will never forsake this enterprise, though all the other adventurers should do so. We have procured you a charter the best we could, which is better than the former, and with less limitations. As for anything else that is worth writing, Mr. Cushman can inform you. I pray write instantly for Mr. Robinson to come to you, and so praying God to bless you with all graces necessary both for this life and that to come, I rest your loving friend, Thos Weston. London, July 6th, 1621. This ship, called the Fortune, was speedily dispatched, laden with good clapboard as far as she could stow, and 2 hogsheads of beaver and otter skins, which they had traded in exchange for a few trifling commodities brought with them at first, being otherwise altogether unprovided for trading, nor was there a man among them who had ever seen a beaver skin till they came out and were instructed by Squanto. The freight was estimated to be worth 500. Mr. Cushman returned with the ship, as Mr. Weston and the rest had commissioned him, for their better information, and neither he nor the settlers doubted that they would receive speedy supplies, considering that, owing to Mr. Cushman's persuasion, and to letters which they received from the congregation at Leyden, urging them to do so, they agreed to the aforesaid conditions and signed them. But it proved otherwise for Mr. Weston, who had made the large promise in his letter that if all the rest should drop out, he would never quit the business, but would stick to them if they signed the conditions and sent some lading on the ship. And of this Mr. Cushman was equally confident, confirming it by Mr. Weston's own words and serious protestations to himself before he left. All this, I say, proved but wind, for he was the first and only man that forsook them, and that before he had so much as heard of the return of the ship, or knew what had been done. So vain is confidence in man. But of this more in this place. A letter in answer to that written by Mr. Weston to Mr. Carver was sent from the governor, of which so much as is pertinent to the things in hand I will insert here. Governor Bradford at New Plymouth to Mr. Weston in England. Sir, Your long letter written to Mr. Carver and dated July 6th of 1621 I received on November 10th, wherein, after the apology made for yourself, you lay many imputations upon him and us all. Touching him, he is now departed this life, and is at rest in the Lord from all these troubles and encumbrances with which we yet strive. He needs not my apology, for his care and pains were so great for the common good, both ours and yours, that, as it is thought, he thereby oppressed himself and shortened his days, of whose loss we cannot sufficiently complain. At great expense in this adventure, I confess, you have been, and many losses may sustain, but the loss of his and many other industrious men's lives cannot be valued at any price. Of the one there may be hope of recovery, but the other no recompense can make good. However, I will not confine myself to general statements, but will deal with your particular charges. You greatly blame us for keeping the ship so long in the country, and then sending her away empty. She lay 5 weeks at Cape Cod, whilst with many a weary step, after a long journey and the endurance of many a hard brunt, we sought out the depth of winter a place of habitation. Then we set about, as well as we could, to provide shelter for ourselves and our goods, upon which tasks many of our arms and legs can tell us to this day that we were not negligent. But it pleased God to visit us then with death daily, with a disease so disastrous that the living were scarcely able to bury the dead, and the healthy not in any measure to tend the sick. And now to be so greatly blamed for not freighting the ship touches our near that discourages us much. But you say you know we shall plead weakness, and do you think that we had not cause? Yes, you tell us you believe it, but that it was more weakness of judgment than of hands. Our weakness herein is great, we confess, therefore we will bear the rebuke patiently with the rest, till God send us wiser men. But those who told you we spent so much time in discoursing and consulting, etc., their hearts can tell their tongues they lie. They care not, so that they salve their own sores, how they wound others. Indeed, it is our calamity that we are, beyond expectation, yoked with some ill disposed people, who, while they do no good themselves, corrupt and abuse others. The rest of the letter stated that they had subscribed to the conditions according to his desire, and sent him the previous accounts very exactly. Also how the ship was laden, and in what condition their affairs stood. That the arrival of the new people would bring famine upon them unavoidably, if they did not receive supplies in time, as Mr. Cushman could more fully inform him the rest of the adventurers. Also, that seeing he was not satisfied in his demands, he hoped offences would be forgotten, and he would remember his promise, etc. After the departure of this ship, which did not stay above 14 days, the governor and his assistant, having disposed the new arrivals among several families as best they could, took an exact account of all their provisions and store, proportioned the same to the number of persons, and found that it would not hold out about 6 months and a half allowance, and hardly that. They could not well give less this winter, till fish came in again, so they were presently put on half allowance, one as well as another. It became irksome, but they bore it patiently, hoping to receive fresh supplies. Soon after this ship's departure, the great Narragansett tribe, in a braving manner, sent a messenger to them with a bundle of arrows tied about with a great snake skin, which their interpreters told them was a threatening challenge. Upon which the governor, with the advice of the others, sent them a round answer, that if they would rather have war than peace, they might begin when they would. They had done them no wrong, neither did they fear them, nor would they find them unprepared. They sent the snake skin back by another messenger with bullets in it, but they would not receive it, and returned it again. These things I need merely mention, because they are fully dealt with in print by Mr. Winslow at the request of some friends. The reason was probably their own ambition, thinking, since the death of so many of the Indians, so domineer and lord it over the rest, and that the English would be a bar in their way, Massasoit having taken shelter already under their wings. But this made the settlers more careful to look to themselves, They agreed to enclose their dwelling in a good strong stockade, and make flankers in convenient places with gates to shut. These they locked every night, and a watch was kept, and when need required there were also outposts in the daytime. The colonists at the captain's and governor's advice were divided into 4 squadrons, and every one had his quarter appointed to which to repair at any sudden alarm, and in case of fire. A company with muskets was appointed as a guard to prevent Indian treachery, whilst the others quenched it. This was accomplished very cheerfully, and the town was enclosed by the beginning of March, every family having a pretty garden plot. Herewith I shall end this year, except to recall one more incident, rather amusing than serious. On Christmas Day the governor called the people out to work as usual. But most of the new company excused themselves and said it went against their conscience to work on that day. So the governor told them if they made it a matter of conscience, he would spare them till they were better informed. So he went with the rest and left them. On returning from work at noon, he found them at play in the street, some pitching the bar, some on stool ball, and such like sports. So he went to them, took away their games, and told them that it was against his conscience that they should play and others work. If they made that keeping of the day a matter of devotion, let them remain in their houses, but there should be no gaming and revelling in the streets. Since then nothing has been attempted in that way, at least openly.